A warm welcome to you all to another episode of UCS Podcasts. Through our podcasts, we, the team at UCS, are working to create an awareness amongst our listeners on various issues that pertain to work life culture in today's fast developing corporate world. A few days ago, my cousin brother, who is a manager in a software company, had visited my family. During conversation at dinner, I heard him mention to my father, "Oh God, uncle, with the anti sexual harassment law, the POSH Act, I don't even want to talk to a woman at my workplace because who knows what will turn into a sexual harassment complaint. In fact, I feel that it is best that I don't employ women in my team at all." This got me thinking as to how people have misunderstood the law. Like my cousin brother, there are several out there in the corporate world who must be thinking on the same lines. This conversation framed the base for today's episode on when to draw a line. We have with us Miss Anupama, our chief trainer from UCS, who is a lawyer with 20 plus years experience with specialization in labor laws, general corporate laws, is a director on the board of several companies and who also has a postgraduate diploma in industrial psychology. She will help us understand the importance of drawing a line at the workplace. Welcome, Anupama. To begin with, what advice would you give my cousin and several other people out there who have the same belief as him?
Kaveri is just not your cousin. A lot of people comment on the very same lines. The POSH Act, as I have repeated several times earlier, is not made to threaten any specific gender. The act is that of a social enactment formulated to protect a minority section at the workplace. Yes, we all know that often such laws are misused and people who ought to get protection from the act do not get the required protection. We all know about the infamous Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code, which was grossly misused. However, in my opinion, the awareness created for Section 498A in the society was nil. And we had certain people advising people in the society in an improper manner. The difference that I see here under the POSH Act is that the law has created an opportunity to create awareness of not only what is sexual harassment and how women can be protected, but also what happens if the same is misused. Therefore, it is my belief that it is not as draconian as it is made out to be.
These days, the work life culture in several organizations is very informal. In many workplaces, the percentage of young generation who are employees is larger. Employees come from different cultures, backgrounds, and age groups. Today's work culture is very different to what it was 10 or 15 years ago. Employees are friendly, they go out and socialize. In such situations, while working or mingling with colleagues, how best can one prevent sexual harassment from happening unintentionally?
Kaveri, as I mentioned before as well, there is nothing as intentional or unintentional when it comes to sexual harassment. Now, I've already covered that in my earlier episodes. However, for the specific question that you asked, it's very easy, Kaveri. All that one is required to do is to draw a line.
By drawing a line, do you mean having restrictions?
By drawing a line, all I mean is to respect a no and to be understanding and empathetic to a fellow colleague, especially when someone does something or says something making the other person uncomfortable. As you rightly mentioned earlier, the generation Z, Y, and millennials coming into workforce and with the culture that MNCs carry, the workplace culture has changed drastically. However, it is absolutely okay to have a friendly and an informal atmosphere as long as one realizes when they step over another's toe and notice that the other person is not comfortable with it or has indicated that they do not entertain it, then the person committing such an act must have to draw themselves back. It may also be good for our listeners to listen to our previous podcast titled Intent Does Not Matter, which will also help in understanding where a line has to be drawn. Let me mention an incident which came before the Internal Complaints Committee, of which I was the external member. One Mr. X and one Miss Y, who were working in the same organization, had become very good friends over a period of time. They hung out together, went out for coffee, lunches, dinners, and movies after office hours. And all that was absolutely fine. During an office party, Mr. X commented in the presence of a few colleagues, but in a language only both had understood, about how low the neckline of Miss Y was. Miss Y expressed her discomfort to Mr. X and asked him to stop passing such comments. Mr. X, however, continued to pass such comments subsequently as well, under the impression that she was a friend, and just as he would talk to another male colleague, he could continue to talk to her. Unable to convince her friend, Miss X finally filed a case of sexual harassment with the IC of the company. Of course, Mr. X's argument here was that they were close friends and thought that his comment would not be taken as an offense by Mrs. Y. What he failed to understand was his statements were making her uncomfortable as a colleague, and he had to stop when such a cue was given by the female colleague.
One last question, Anupama. While referring to drawing boundaries, do you suggest that people should stop going out after office hours with their colleagues?
No, definitely not. In fact, even in the earlier instance that I spoke about, you would notice that it was absolutely fine as long as X and Y were going out for coffees, picnic, meals. There is absolutely no problem. The POSH Act, please remember, has no intention to curb the work culture or to make work life boring for employees. However, as I've said several times earlier, when one goes out with colleagues, one must just be mindful of how they behave and what they say so that they do not create a situation that will be hard for themselves to deal with later on. In fact, what would be very pertinent is to just take a very different example from workplace itself. What if there are two friends who've been friends since childhood, and somewhere down the line when they've been out together, the friend misbehaves? If you think that is not an acceptable behavior, don't you think it's absolutely fine that colleagues have a personal relationship but know and learn to respect or know or create a situation which is uncomfortable for the other gender? Hope this helps.
Thank you, Anupama, for this wonderful session. This makes it a lot easier for everyone. Have a good work culture, enjoy yourselves, make friends, build happy relationships. But do not overstep your boundary, just be mindful of your words and actions. Why put yourself into a situation which you will regret later on? Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this series very informative and interesting. Remember, it is important that one draws a line. Let's build healthy and happy workplaces together. Do get in touch with us with your queries, suggestions, and feedback by emailing us at admin@upseedconsulting.com or writing to us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. We will be back soon with another interesting topic. Wishing you all a great evening.